thinking strategically is a new, or a newish rather, type of thinking, which I would like you to give us an introduction to, basically.
Yeah, I think strategic thinking is actually a very old, an old process, an old kind of thinking. I think it's being revisited now because I think that people are beginning to almost intuitively realize that the kind of cognition that is used and that supports strategic planning is simply not enough in today's environment. So I think people are very interested in saying, what else can we do? What else is out there? And so the approach that I use for strategic thinking is that I look at the cognitions that support strategic planning, which are very different than the cognitions that are required for strategic thinking or for strategic implementation. So I kind of tease it apart in terms of the types of cognition that are used.
So strategic thinking, Dr. Julia, then, is a type of thinking that is used with strategic planning and strategic implementation. It's not a kind of thinking that is standalone or in its own.
Exactly, exactly. And I think sometimes that's misunderstood. But the types of cognition that are required for strategic thinking are in fact distinctly different from the cognitions that are required for strategic planning. And I think successful strategic leaders actually need to have the agility to move between those.
So does it follow that to have a good strategic plan, you need to have a good strategic thinking behind it? Is it like what comes first? Is one a prerequisite to the other?
You know, this is a question that I get all the time because I think that there's an assumption that there's a linear process that people often believe that you should start with strategic thinking, then move to strategic planning, then move to strategic implementation, that in fact it's a cycle. When in fact it's not that way at all. Many times you'll start with a very good strategic plan and then move into strategic thinking, because strategic thinking is where we diverge the issues, we diverge on the underlying assumptions. We actually need to identify those assumptions first before we can actually challenge them. So it's not a linear process. You can start wherever you happen to be.
As long as you bring it into the whole equation at some point,
yeah,
to enhance. Brilliant. Excellent.
And ultimately, you need to incorporate all three: strategic thinking, strategic planning, and strategic implementation into a strategy process.